Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today I am showing you how to make this incredible and incredibly easy artisan bread. It yields the perfect crumb and the perfect flavor and is great for making for dinner. It comes together super fast and it tastes amazing, so let's go ahead and start throwing this together. So today's recipe starts with 3.5 cups of bread flour. I do recommend bread flour over all-purpose, and another thing to keep in mind is this recipe uses very few ingredients, so the quality of each one is pretty important. So starting with a nice high-protein bread flour is a good way to get a nice loaf of bread. The next thing we are going to add is 2 1/4 teaspoons of rapid rise yeast. Yours may say instant yeast, either way, it'll work. I'm gonna get all of that in there. We're also going to toss in a tablespoon of granulated sugar. So the sugar is actually optional. I like to use it because it helps boost the yeast. It gives the bread just a nicer flavor, but if you leave it out, your bread will still taste good. We'll also add 1.5 teaspoons of table salt and just quickly stir these ingredients together until they're completely combined. Just try to keep everything in your bowl. Next ingredient is 1.5 cups of warm water. You should aim for a temperature of about 115 degrees Fahrenheit. This is important because if your water is too cold, it's not going to properly activate the yeast. If it is too warm, it could kill the yeast, and then you're not going to get the rise that you want and need in your bread. So I'm just going to add this right in. And we will stir everything together until all of that flour and water are well incorporated. The dough we're going to end up with is going to be a sticky dough, and that is normal. Artisan bread is typically what we call a high hydration bread, which just means it has more water in it. And a bread like this can be a little more difficult to handle, but fortunately there is very little actual hands-on handling required with this recipe. I want to make sure I get all of that flour in there. Nothing hiding on the bottom. All right, once you have everything nicely mixed up, we are really done for the next couple hours at least. First, we're going to cover this with some plastic wrap. And we are going to transfer this to a warm place for the dough to rise. Actually, I should correct myself. You have two options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this to a warm place. If you have a proofing oven, that's nice. Ironically, my pantry gets really warm, which isn't great, but I'll put this in there and I'll let it rise for about 2 hours until it's doubled in size. However, if you would rather prep this bread now and enjoy it tomorrow, you can let it sit like this for 15 minutes and then pop it in your refrigerator and let it sit overnight, and then you can bake it tomorrow. Just follow the same instructions that I'll be showing you when we proceed with this recipe. See you in a couple hours. All right, it's been a couple hours. You can see our bread is nice and risen. It's doubled in size. Let's go ahead and uncover that. And you're going to need more flour for this step, potentially a lot more flour. I'm going to quite generously, I was a little more generous than I meant to be, but I'm going to dust my surface pretty generously and turn this bread out onto that flour. And the bread is going to be very sticky, that's normal. Now this can be a little tricky to manage at this point, so I'm gonna dust it generously, dust my hands generously. And the bread wants to stick to everything, so nice little coating of flour is good for it. Now there's no actual kneading required for this dough, but we do need a little bit of hands-on time. If you've ever made my sourdough, you are familiar with the process of stretch and fold. That's what we're going to do here. It's a lot faster than spending 5 minutes kneading. We're going to take the top of the bread, working at 12 o'clock, and we're gonna fold it over the bottom. Then we'll go to 3 o'clock, take the dough and fold that over. Now we'll go to 6 o'clock. If I feel like the dough's too sticky, I just add a little more flour. Don't be afraid to add flour. And I'll fold this over. And then finally, 9 o'clock. Hopefully I got my times right here. And fold this over. I want to form the dough into a nice ball. So now I'm just going to use my hands, adding flour if needed, to form it into a nice ball. Getting a little stickiness there, so I'll just fold that under. All right, we have formed this into a ball. Now I'm going to transfer it over to a piece of parchment paper. And you want to try to center it in the parchment paper because this is how you're going to transfer it to our cooking vessel, which I will talk about more in just a second. I'm going to use a bench scraper to help me move it a little bit. I want to make this just a little bit more ball shaped. Dust off that extra flour because you don't need that. All right, I'm going to cover this with, lightly cover it with plastic wrap, and this is now going to sit for 30 minutes. Now, while it is sitting, you're going to want to get your oven preheating to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, for this bread, I use and recommend baking it in a 4-quart cast iron Dutch oven. If you don't have one of these, I will include some notes over on the blog post on how you can cook it in a bread pan or on a baking sheet, but this is really the best way to do it if you have one. So while that oven is preheating to 450 degrees, we are going to pop this in on the center rack so it can start warming up, which is going to give our bread a great baking environment when we finally get it in the oven. And just because I want to make sure this is clear, this sits for 30 minutes. Do your oven preheating and warming up your Dutch oven while this is sitting for 30 minutes. All right, after 30 minutes, this will be nice and hot. Your oven will be preheated. We're going to take the lid off. Be very careful. Remember, this is hot. It's going to be hot when you go to put it back in the oven. And we'll remove our plastic wrap. This will be a little sticky, that's fine. And you'll also notice it's spread some, that's normal. Now we'll use our parchment paper to grab the dough, pick it up, and very carefully transfer it to our Dutch oven. Now I also like to score the bread before it goes in the oven, which just means taking a sharp knife and slashing it down the center. And then we'll cover this with our lid. And we'll take this back to our 350 degree Fahrenheit oven where it'll bake in the center rack for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, remove the lid and continue to bake it for another 10 minutes. All right, this will be super hot when it comes out of the oven. I like to let it sit in the pan, the Dutch oven, for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'll use this parchment to carefully remove it to a cooling rack. And I'll actually slide it off the parchment paper. And we're going to let it cool completely or almost completely before we cut into it. With bread like this one or with sourdough, you don't want to cut into it too soon or else it can look super wet on the inside and the texture can be negatively affected. So let it sit. I find it usually takes about an hour until it is cool or at least mostly cool before you dig in. All right, it's taken a lot of patience, but this bread has mostly cooled. So I'm going to go ahead and cut into it so you can take a look. Nice thick end piece so you can see how this looks. Oh yeah. And that is how you make this super easy artisan bread. Yes, it takes some time and some patience, but it is so worth it, and the actual work required is like, what, 5 minutes? I really hope you enjoyed today's recipe. If you try this one, let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. All we need is a little bit of butter. I can't believe how much flavor we get with so little effort. This is amazing.